Today we are going to visit Airlie Gardens in Wilmington, North Carolina. In 1884, Sarah Jones and her husband bought land located just a few miles off the coast. The Joneses decided to call the land Airlie on the Sound. Pembroke and Sarah's home was built on the land, and that is where the gardens began. Airlie was originally just a small, old-fashioned flower garden, but Sarah had bigger plans in mind. The Joneses began holding huge parties in the massive gardens and invited many wealthy and famous people. The parties were truly over the top. The Joneses would hand out gold and diamond jewelry. Chefs, entertainers, and musicians traveled from near and far to help host the parties. Picnics were held high in the trees with tables set with sterling silver. Even the squirrels were dressed. While the Joneses loved to entertain guests, Sarah was still focused on the growing gardens. Over the years, with the help of people who lived with the family, the Joneses continued to build their gardens to be as extravagant as they are today. We begin our trip at the front door where the ticket office is located. After buying our tickets, we move on outside to the path. Out here is a picture of the original Airlie house where Sarah and her husband Pembroke lived. Right next to this picture is the model Airlie house. This miniature house is a representation of the original Airlie house, pre- and post-renovation. Next on the trail is the park map. Don't forget to check it so we don't get lost. Our first stop is the Bradley Creek Pier. This is a private pier used for educational programs. This pier provides a unique view east towards Wrightsville Beach. Off of this pier, we see things like boats, which are a common form of transportation in our location at the beach. Our next stop is the massive Airlie Oak, sitting right in the middle of the park. This huge tree dates back to 1545. That's almost 400 years ago. This is also a North Carolina state champion live oak tree. It is one of the largest trees of its kind in the Carolinas. When we continue along our path, we run into this sweet old lady. Her name was Minnie Evans, and she worked for Airlie Gardens. Many years she was a gatekeeper at the very front gates. She also liked to sell her art here. When Minnie died, lots of people in the gardens thought it would be important to share her memory with those who also love the gardens. Over 20 years ago, they established this bottle chapel in memory of Minnie Evans and all that she gave to Airlie Gardens. While we're walking along the trail, don't forget to check out the thousands of different kinds of gardens you see along the sides of the paths. These were planted by Sarah and her gardeners. These flowers people came from far and wide to see as they represented springtime in the southern state of North Carolina. Our next step is the Tranquility Gardens. This features Airlie's massive butterfly house. In the months of May through mid-October, this tranquil setting is home to a variety of showcase gardens and many local butterflies. Further down the path we come to the Pergola Garden. This was designed in the early 1900s by Sarah herself. This was her favorite place in the garden. It overlooks the lake and eventually Bradley Creek. At the end of the path there's a beautiful water fountain, and the steps from the pathway lead right down into the lake. Next we come to the Mystery Grave. This is an eerie part of the garden. Here we see the grave site of a mystery man. Some say it may have been a teacher of the children that lived in Airlie Gardens. Others say that it was a soldier for Napoleon. Hidden in the woods, in the very back of Airlie Gardens, is the Lebanon Chapel. This church was built in 1835. The property is currently part of St. James Episcopal Church, which is in downtown Wilmington. Sometimes this church still holds worship services. Behind the little church is the spooky cemetery. Here we see lots of wrought iron gates, old headstones, and many sunken graves. Here we are looking at the graves of the Corbett family, who were the last people to own the Airlie Gardens. Last but not least, we come to the stone that says Eliza Rebecca Bradley. I'm guessing that this was the woman that Bradley Creek was named after. This is the end of our trip. I hope you have had lots of fun learning with me today.